A psychic teenager, a world collapsing into an abyss, and a looming deadline set for the anniversary of the first disappearance. The massive narrative stakes for the conclusion of Stranger Things couldn't really be higher.
Or, more heavily scrutinized.
Exactly.
Ah.
So today we are doing a deep dive into these final chapters. We're looking at the intense expectations, the really surprising complexities of the lore, and some of the sharpest critiques about plot holes that seem to, break the show's own logic.
We've pulled together a huge amount of material for this. We're talking detailed fan theories, professional reviews, even some meta-analyses of the Duffer Brothers' writing choices.
And it really shows how invested people are.
Oh, completely. It's almost personal, this thing about the survival of Hawkins. And the feedback is, it's contradictory. On one hand, the story is emotionally satisfying, but on the other, the execution in some key moments has left a lot of longtime fans questioning the actual rules of this universe.
So our mission today is to unpack all of that. We want to get into these competing views so you are fully prepped for the final showdown.
It's absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute core conflict. By the end of the last volume, we finally know Vecna's ultimate plan, and crucially, it has this terrifying ticking clock attached to it.
And that ticking clock, it defines everything. The urgency is just off the charts. The threat here isn't just, a localized disaster in Hawkins.
No, it's bigger.
It's a total dimensional transformation of the town, and maybe the whole world. I mean, Vecna is already halfway through merging what the sources call Dimension X, or sometimes the Abyss, with our world.
And if that merge completes, everything changes.
It's existential. If that final connection is made, the separation between the dimensions, it just vanishes. The real world, as they know it, gets completely overwritten by the Upside Down.
That makes the stakes feel so much higher. And it makes his choice of a deadline feel particularly, cruel and narratively perfect. Why tonight? Why this specific date?
Well, the date is maybe the most poetically devastating piece of lore in his whole scheme. It was actually Lucas, using his, sharp observational skills, who figured it out.
He theorized the exact deadline.
He did. Vecna plans to complete this merge tonight on November 6th.
November 6th.
Okay.
And we all know that date, of course.
Precisely. It's the anniversary of Will Byers' original disappearance back in 1983.
The moment it all began.
It's the foundational moment that shattered Hawkins' peace and really started this whole dimensional war. By choosing this anniversary, Vecna is engineering this tragic, full circle moment.
He's basically saying, this started with you, Will, and it's going to end with your world collapsing on the exact same night.
Yes. It is the ultimate psychological attack on the whole group. He's closing the loop on the exact moment that gate first cracked open and Will became the unwilling victim who started it all.
It makes Vecna feel less like just a monster and more like a narrative architect, right? He's designing the end to be as emotionally devastating as possible.
He is.
But even with all his psychic power, he can't just merge two dimensions by himself. What are the specific mechanics he's using to pull this off?
He needs a massive power boost, an amplification. The sources all confirm he's captured and is using 12 controlled children.
Children?
Yeah, as psychic vessels. These 12 are necessary to amplify his own innate power enough to complete the final, devastating merger. It tears down the walls between worlds for good.
So even he has limits.
It shows that while he is immensely powerful, the sheer scale of merging two realities requires this focused, collective energy source, basically a sacrificial network of minds.
So the stakes are cosmic, they're personalized, and they're tied to the show's very origin. This pivots us directly to the character who is most crucial to defeating him, and also the most tangled up in all this, Will Byers.
Will's journey is one of the most important parts of the final saga, from the kid hiding in the shed to a key player. He's been linked to Vecna or whatever was controlling the Upside Down since that first night.
Even after the Mind Flayer was expelled?
Yes, even after that, he kept feeling that presence, that famous creeping feeling on the back of his neck, which he now recognizes as Vecna's influence.
So he's no longer just a barometer for danger. He's actively fighting back. How does that victim-to-hero transformation actually play out in the battle?
It manifests as his unique ability to counter Vecna's psychic attacks. Will is leveraging that painful, innate connection he has as a weapon.
And we've seen it work.
We have. His intervention is crucial in two major ways. First, he's the one who stops Vecna from strangling Max's consciousness when she's at her most vulnerable. And second, he later prevents Vecna from recapturing Holly.
So he's fighting on a purely mental battlefield.
Exactly. And this ability to fight back, not with strength or learning spells, but with pure inherent mental resistance, it just highlights his unique place in the group and his own power.
That distinction, inherent power versus learned ability, is perfectly framed by the Dungeons & Dragons lore the show leans on so heavily. Let's break down that analogy because it's fantastic.
It really is. It connects seamlessly to the D&D class system, which, as a storytelling device, makes these complicated powers so much easier for the audience to grasp. Will's new role aligns perfectly with a sorcerer.
Okay, so in D&D terms, what's a sorcerer?
Sorcerers have innate magical abilities. They're just born with a gift, often from some unique bloodline or a connection to a primal source of power. It's not something they study.
And that's a sharp contrast with someone like Eleven, right?
In a very sharp contrast. She fits the wizard class. Wizards, like Eleven under Brenner, they study and train and work to gain their powers. Eleven's abilities are tied back to the lab experiments, a kind of forced, accelerated learning.
But Will's is different.
Will's power is fundamental. It's inherent because his connection to Vecna is a side effect of that initial breach. He was exposed and marked, and through that he gained this raw, unrefined ability to sense and maybe even manipulate that connection.
It reinforces the idea that he isn't just part of the story.
He is the reason the story began.
That detail really elevates the stakes. And speaking of deep lore, the Duffer Brothers embed these ideas right into the episode titles, like a thematic roadmap.
Oh, the titles are brilliant. They're all thematic foreshadowing and literary allusions. Let's take, for example, Escape from Camazotz.
Which our sources confirm is a direct reference to A Wrinkle in Time.
A direct, deliberate reference. And for anyone who hasn't read it recently, Camazotz is a planet where every single mind is controlled by an evil, disembodied force, they just call it.
A hive mind.
A terrifying hive mind. The whole population is forced into this robotic, rhythmic conformity. It's a clear, precise, and frankly chilling metaphor for Vecna's ultimate plan.
He doesn't just want to kill people.
No, he wants to enslave and control every mind in Hawkins and beyond, trapping them in his mental prison. Understanding that reference gives you a much deeper fear than just a monster.
It grounds the sci-fi horror in classic literature. And we also see titles that signify transition, like The Bridge.
The Bridge is a classic example of a title with multiple meanings. On the surface, it's the physical bridge between dimensions, the rifts tearing through Hawkins.
But there's more to it.
Of course. On a deeper level, it represents the emotional bridge the kids are crossing from childhood innocence to, traumatized adulthood. And most crucially, as we discussed, Will himself is the psychic bridge between the group and Vecna.
He's the link that lets them into their enemy's mind.
Exactly.
Okay, before we dive into the mountain of criticisms, there was a great detail in the sources about how the show actually course-corrected a common misconception about the music from season 4.
This was a subtle but really important clarification. When Max was rescued in season 4 using Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, a lot of viewers assumed the music itself had some kind of, magical anti-Vecna property.
A classic fantasy trope. The magic song.
Right, and it seemed like a bit of a convenient plot device, but Volume 2 explicitly subverts that idea. The sources explain the song was only effective because of the intense, profound emotional connection it represented.
So it wasn't the melody itself.
No. It was Max's link to Lucas, her friends, and everything she loved. That provided a mental anchor outside of Vecna's reach. This choice deepens the meaning of that whole Season 4 moment. It turns the escape from a magical deus ex machina into this powerful testament to human connection against trauma.
It grounds the escape in psychology, not wizardry.
Exactly.
That level of narrative clarity is really impressive, but it definitely didn't save the show from intense scrutiny. So now we have to pivot to the heavy stack of fan and critical critiques. The fervor around the conclusion has been matched by some significant fan frustration.
Well, this is the challenge for any long-running series, isn't it? You establish complex roles, and when the stakes get high in the finale, sticking to those roles can mean killing a beloved character.
And when a character survives something that violates the established lore.
The audience feels betrayed. The critiques, as you said, they really fall into 3 major buckets. Monster power scaling, protagonist plot armor, and then just broken rules of the environment itself.
Let's start with the monsters. Specifically, the Demogorgons and Demodogs. They seem to suffer from what one critic called plot armor sonoro.
That phrase, plot armor sonoro or sonic plot armor, is perfect. It was coined by critics to describe the Demodog's totally inconsistent behavior with sound.
This is a huge sticking point for people.
It's massive. Let's remember the rules from Season 2. Demodogs were established as being hypersensitive to sound. They could detect a dropped broom, a faint noise, even the sound of a single drop of sweat hitting the floor in total silence.
They were the ultimate auditory predators.
They were, but in the latest volumes, in a crucial scene, they become selectively deaf. It's absurd. The sources point out they completely ignore Kate Bush's music playing at full volume in the hospital to protect Max.
A loud, sustained sound.
A rock anthem. And yet, moments later, something totally trivial distracts them.
Right, like a washing machine.
Exactly. These same creatures are suddenly drawn to the whirring of a washing machine or an improvised explosion. If they can hear an appliance or a drop of sweat, ignoring a song at max volume just breaks the internal logic completely. The monsters only hear what the plot needs them to hear.
And it's not just their hearing that fluctuates, right?
Yeah.
It's their durability. Their threat level seems entirely dependent on who they're up against.
The durability problem is another critical issue. They've lost all their original threat level when facing the core group. We see Lucas, a normal human, manage to physically kick a Demodog away while carrying an injured Max.
And the most cited, most baffling example involves Karen Wheeler, Mike's mom.
It's the ultimate indictment of monster inconsistency. Karen Wheeler, a suburban mom, somehow manages to severely injure or repel a Demodog using either fire or a simple glass bottle.
Which is just impossible.
Well, contrast that with what we see elsewhere. Trained, heavily armed military squads with rifles and explosives are killed effortlessly by the exact same creatures. When a non-combatant can fend off something that kills trained soldiers, the suspension of disbelief is just shattered.
It's not tension anymore, it's narrative cheating.
Exactly. It's prioritizing character survival over the show's own established threat level.
That's a powerful point.
Uh-huh.
Let's move on to the heroes themselves, because some of them received sudden, dramatic upgrades that critics found equally baffling. Nancy Wheeler, in particular, seems to have completed a Rambo training course off-screen.
Nancy's arc, transforming into the cinematic action hero, is frequently cited as being extremely forced. Earlier in the show, she used smaller weapons pistols, shotguns, usually in close quarters, defensive situations. She was competent, but she was grounded. Suddenly, she has elite, flawless marksmanship with heavy military rifles. The sources note the physical implausibility of it all. She manages the intense recoil of these weapons with no training, no physical strain, and effortlessly defeats trained military squads who, again, can't seem to hit a thing.
She becomes Rambo in a camisole.
That's the phrase, and it really pulls you out of the sci-fi horror tone. It's a classic case of plot convenience trumping character continuity.
And then there's Hopper. The change in his physique is one thing, but the contradiction in his character arc is what truly raises eyebrows.
Hopper's physical transformation, critics called it his Kratos transformation, is stark. He goes from the donut-loving sheriff to this hardened, unstoppable figure, almost a Chuck Norris character, killing Demogorgons in a Russian prison.
And while the prison time explains the new Edge, the major inconsistency revolves around Eleven.
It revolves entirely around Eleven. Why is he constantly trying to protect the one person who doesn't need protecting?
I mean, she can move cars with her mind.
Exactly. Despite his new action hero status, he's constantly telling Eleven, the most powerful character in the entire series, to hide behind him, the non-powered human. This happens even in situations where only her immense psychic powers could possibly solve the problem, like holding back a dimensional rift.
It actively nerfs Eleven's perceived competence.
It does, while simultaneously inflating Hopper's importance to the group. It just muddles the narrative hierarchy of who is actually the most capable in a fight.
And speaking of Eleven, the critiques about her character aren't just about her power level. They extend to her emotional presentation.
Eleven is frequently cited as being excessively nerfed. We have a clear baseline from Season 1. She could easily lift a van. Now, in recent volumes, sources point out she struggles dramatically to lift a simple steel bar or is shown straining with tasks that used to be effortless.
Even accounting for trauma, it feels like a big step down.
Fans argue the inconsistency is excessive and it diminishes the credibility of their main weapon against Vecna. But the more sensitive critique is about the change in her demeanor.
The emotional connection seems to have faded for some viewers.
That's the most specific fan complaint. Her expressionless demeanor of face critics have cynically called the Sigma face, or even more crudely, that she looks like she's concentrating very, very hard.
Right.
We should clarify, the Sigma face is modern internet slang for a sort of non-emotional stylized expression. But the critical point underneath is serious. Fans feel her lack of emotional openness and the visible changes due to the actress's natural aging have made it hard to convey the original character's innocence and vulnerability.
It creates a
A
disconnect.
huge disconnect, making the main protagonist feel distant or restrained at a time when you need to be closest to her.
It sounds like the audience feels they've lost the original 11, not just through plot, but through performance and direction. Okay, moving on, let's tackle the third big bucket of inconsistency. The broken rules of the Upside Down itself, starting with the heir.
This is maybe the most fundamental break from the established canon, and it really undercuts the show's initial horror. Early seasons, especially season 1, established that the Upside Down was a profoundly hostile environment.
Hazmat suits.
Exactly. Characters needed full protection suits to enter because the air was highly toxic, filled with dangerous spores and particles. The environment itself was a source of fear.
It was a suffocating alien world.
Absolutely. And now, groups just enter and exit freely, breathing normally. Characters confirm the air is somehow non-toxic. Some fans try to rationalize it, saying maybe the Season 4 rift mitigated the toxicity, but the overwhelming critical consensus is that the show just discarded an essential, terrifying element of the established danger to make things easier for the cast.
It simplifies the danger. The Upside Down is no longer a hostile dimension, just a slightly darker, abandoned version of Hawkins.
And that simplification leads right into the critique of the calm apocalypse.
The dissonance between the Season 4 cliffhanger and the start of Season 5 is jarring.
Completely. The Season 4 finale showed these massive, destructive, dimensional cracks spreading across Hawkins, killing all the vegetation, promising environmental chaos. The world was literally splitting apart.
And Season 5 begins with,
What? Hawkins looking relatively normal. It shows no pervasive sense of immediate apocalyptic danger. And the government's official explanation, that it was all just a massive earthquake, is cited by so many sources as a cheap, lazy solution.
he doesn't justify the town's complacency at all.
Not at all. Fans expected the new season to begin in a genuine wasteland, capitalizing on that devastating cliffhanger. But instead, the writers seem to have backed off the high-stakes consequences of their own plot devices, just to keep the setting manageable and familiar.
It's almost as if they were afraid of committing to the world-ending event they promised, maybe struggling to write a show where the core setting is fundamentally destroyed.
And what's fascinating here is how all these micro-critiques, the broken monster rules, the plot armor, they all compound into these truly seismic expectations for the finale.
The audience's emotional investment is huge.
It's immense, and every past inconsistency means the conclusion has to be near perfect. This pressure is amplified, knowing the finale is confirmed to be roughly 2 hours and 8 minutes long.
That's a feature film.
It's a feature film. That's a massive amount of time to either deliver a legendary ending or completely collapse under the weight of these inconsistencies.
Let's talk about the inevitable focus of all final theorins. Who makes the ultimate sacrifice? Because, as we've noted, the show has this reputation for avoiding core character deaths.
That reputation fuels the most heartbreaking fan speculation. The darkest, but also maybe the most dramatically satisfying theory is the Horcrux theory.
Borrowing from Harry Potter.
Exactly. The idea that a soul fragment is tied to a living vessel. So Will's connection to Vecna, established since 1983, isn't just a connection, it's the Horcrux.
So, to truly kill Vecna,
Will has to die.
Yeah.
The theory suggests Vecna can't be truly killed, only banished, unless the source of his anchor in the human world is eliminated. If Will is that permanent anchor, his death would be required.
that would be the ultimate tragic full circle moment.
It would, ending the war in the same place it started, only this time permanently. This theory gained massive traction because the actor, Noah Schnapp, has been noted in multiple interviews for getting really emotional when discussing the ending.
Which fans immediately interpreted as confirmation.
Of course, especially given that Will has only recently had these pivotal personal breakthroughs, it would be a total gut punch.
After everything he's been through. But from a writing perspective, is there a reason they might choose that devastating route?
Psychologically, that kind of sacrifice elevates the ending beyond just a simple action victory. It provides accountability. Since the show has been criticized for plot armor, sacrificing the character who started the whole conflict would deliver an unforgettable emotional cost, making the victory feel truly earned.
But what if they stick to their pattern of avoiding core deaths? What's the less devastating but still impactful alternative?
That would be the distributed scars scenario. Victory comes, but at a permanent, non-lethal cost. So instead of mass death, several characters suffer lasting, irreparable damage.
For example,
Max survives, but with permanent blindness or other physical scars. Eleven might permanently lose her powers as the cost of the final effort. Hopper might sacrifice himself to seal the gate, fulfilling his role as protector, but maybe the writers leave a loophole for his eventual return.
so victory with a cost, but the core group stays intact.
Exactly. It allows for emotional weight without dismantling the cast dynamic for any future spin-offs.
And based on the show's past behavior, who are the most vulnerable targets if they need a body count without touching the main cast?
Critics are unanimous on this. The show is consistently reluctant to kill established protagonists like Steve, Dustin, or the parents. So the most likely candidates for death are any characters who were introduced later or exist on the periphery.
The disposable characters.
The disposable characters. Kali, or 008 from Season 2, for instance, or any new unnamed military or civilian character. They serve as convenient sacrifices to lend the climax some weight without upsetting the central dynamic.
Okay, let's switch gears and focus on the narrative choices that cause friction, even if the intentions were good. Will's coming out scene is a major point of contention.
The scene where Will reveals his sexuality, a moment of profound personal importance for his character, was unfortunately viewed by many as completely misplaced. Critics used the phrase, totally out of timing.
It happens during a high-urgency mission briefing.
Yes, while the world is literally collapsing outside, it just disrupts the frantic, desperate pace the story had established. Critics argued it prioritized a necessary social agenda over the immediate narrative urgency.
And Mike's reaction didn't help.
No, his reaction was often criticized as overly muted or passive, which just highlighted the awkwardness of the whole sequence.
And there was also the criticism that the scene lacked historical context.
Yes. Critics pointed out how improbable it was for Will to come out so casually in the fiercely homophobic climate of 1980s America, especially in front of a large group that included strangers and a teacher. It felt like a scene written for a modern audience, not one that fit the historical setting.
Another scene that critics felt halted the pacing was the long conversation between Max and Holly inside Vecna's mind.
That dialogue was mockingly called a podcast moment in the sources. The scene was long, it was deeply involved, and extremely calm. Its purpose was functional, sure. It gave Max the mental tools she needed to create a trauma-free zone in her mind to escape Vecna.
So it worked narratively, but it felt wrong tonally.
Precisely. The sheer length and calmness felt utterly inappropriate when the characters outside her mind were in immediate life-threatening peril, trying to save her physical body. The urgency was just completely deflated.
And finally, the vast number of forgotten threads and missing characters, which contributes to the feeling of a rushed script.
This is a consistent criticism. The show's focus narrowed too much on the central group. A whole roster of secondary characters and plot threads were just left hanging. The list is surprisingly long. Max's mother, who just vanished after Max was hospitalized. Mike's father, Ted Wheeler, was totally forgotten. Derek's family, Susie, Dustin's girlfriend, the Russian contact Enzo. The lack of accountability for these characters just adds to the feeling that the script was hastily simplified.
Here's where it gets really interesting. All these critiques, the plot armor, the sudden powers, the broken rules, they lead to one massive, terrifying expectation. The show is facing comparisons to the one series that defined modern narrative failure.
The shadow of Game of Thrones Season 8 looms large. Stranger Things was the defining event television for Netflix starting in 2016.
And part of the power is watching the actors grow up in real time.
It's a nearly decade-long emotional investment, which makes any misstep feel monumental. And the specific criticisms of Stranger Things are mirroring the complaints leveled against that other epic fantasy show.
The core problems are identical.
Exactly. A lack of accountability for world-altering events, rampant plot convenience where characters survive mortal danger just because they're beloved, and the destruction of established narrative conventions. Many fans openly fear the show is heading for a Game of Thrones-level failure.
Where the whole thing just collapses under its own weight.
And tying into that fear is a much broader, more cynical theory about why the writing quality might have declined, linking it to modern consumption habits.
This is the dumbing down theory.
It is, and it's a significant critique of modern streaming content. Some sources speculate that the script was intentionally simplified or dummied down.
Why would they do that?
The theory suggests it was done to facilitate consumption patterns where viewers are multitasking, checking their phones, engaging in other activities rather than giving the show their full attention.
So focus on easily digestible scenes rather than intricate plotting.
Exactly. The focus shifts toward visually loud, easily parsed scenes and relying on nostalgic callbacks, rather than requiring the viewer to keep track of complex lore. If it's true, it suggests the show prioritized watchability and ease of consumption over narrative rigor.
So what does this all mean? We have a massive 2-hour finale looming over a universe built on clear rules, 80s nostalgia, and intense character bonds. But the very rules of that universe seem flexible.
And character capabilities fluctuate wildly based on convenience. The ultimate tension for the audience isn't just defeating Vecna, but whether the Duffer Brothers can overcome the massive weight of expectation and these inconsistencies to deliver a lyrically resonant conclusion.
And that profound uncertainty brings us to the biggest, most ominous piece of lore that could still be leveraged for the finale, something that goes far beyond Henry Creel.
The sources indicate the Duffers established that the Upside Down is controlled by an intelligence far older and more primal than Vecna. Henry Creel, for all his power and hatred, might just be the disposable face of the invasion.
This suggests a true cosmic entity at the top of the hierarchy.
Precisely. Something like Tharizdun from D&D lore, a cosmic force whose only goal is the consumption of all existence. If Vecna is defeated, he is merely the frontline commander being taken out.
So 11 in the group will think the war is over.
They'll undoubtedly believe they've won. They will have killed the head of the monster they know. But if Vecna was just the opening act, and they lower their guard right after their victory.
Wait, so what if Vecna? He's not even the final boss.
Exactly. What if the true King of the Void merely allowed Vecna to be the visible, predictable threat, the target the heroes could focus on? Then the ultimate victory against him would be a fatal distraction. The real, ancient, and truly unknowable cosmic threat could arrive right after the heroes lower their guard and celebrate their peace, setting the stage for a truly horrifying, much larger conflict.
Something to chew on as the final emotional credits roll.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We absolutely have to.
After what feels like an eternity, right? I mean, almost a decade of shared trauma, monster chases, and some really incredible fashion choices.
And incredible fashion choices. Let's not forget those.
The final emotional call to arms has dropped for the Stranger Things series finale, and it's just thrown the entire fandom into this, I don't know, beautiful, chaotic meltdown.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's not just excitement. What we're seeing is this really complex, emotionally demanding mix. It's intense hype, but it's paired with this deep, almost existential fear of loss.
Yeah, a fear of it ending.
Exactly. The producers just succeeded spectacularly in making this feel like a genuine event.
So our mission today for you is, well, it's crucial. We are going to try and filter the signal from all of that noise.
Right, sifting through this mountain of new reaction videos, these incredibly deep dive threads, and just hyper detailed fan comments.
To dissect what's hidden and to decode the most compelling theories that are floating around right now.
And the focus is so immediate. And you said it, it's terrifying. We're facing the end of an era.
The core questions are just staring us in the face. Based on what everyone is saying, who is genuinely expected to survive this?
And what is the real final monster? Is it just Vecna, or is it something bigger that he just opened the door for?
And maybe the biggest question, how is everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down, about Hawkins, about these kids, how is it all about to be just fundamentally rewritten forever?
And what's really defining the conversation right now, it's that the reaction isn't just about the plot mechanics, which are complicated enough.
No.
It's about the feeling of finality, this bittersweet closure. I mean, think about it. Almost a decade has passed since those lights first flickered on.
Wow.
That profound sense of shared time, of investment, that's what's defining how you and all the fans are viewing every single cut, every line, every quick flash in that final trailer.
It's the emotional lens, isn't it? It's the lens through which the whole story has to be consumed now and, more importantly, judged.
Yes.
And that brings us right into the emotional stakes of this whole thing, because that final trailer was nothing short of a nostalgia masterclass.
Oh, completely. It leaned so heavily into raw emotion and memory instead of just giving away spoilers.
The editors were, they were geniuses.
They were. The source analysis shows they gave away almost nothing substantial about the ending specifics. They kept perfect secrecy.
But instead, what they did was feed the audience these quick shots, these iconic moments from old seasons.
And they used old music cues, the specific color grading of season 1, to trigger these massive, decade-spanning memory bombs. It was just marketing.
No, it was emotional manipulation.
In the best possible way, yes.
And the response was just devastation. I'm seeing comments that aren't just, I'm hyped. They're things like, I am emotionally wrecked.
We saw so many of those fans saying they were literally crying.
Predicting they would be a total mess when the finale airs. And the reason for that intensity, it isn't just good marketing, is it? It's because the reality of the show ending is finally profoundly setting in.
And that's the critical cultural point here. This is what happens when a fandom truly grows up with a show.
Right.
For so many viewers, they were kids or teenagers when this all started. Stranger Things has been this constant, reliable presence for 9 years.
I saw one fan comment that just circulated everywhere, and it captured it perfectly. It said that watching the finale feels like, and this is a quote, closing the chapter on their teenage and youth years.
And that just elevates it beyond standard TV excitement, doesn't it?
It makes it a true shared cultural milestone, which, as we know, is getting rarer and rarer in our fragmented, streaming landscape.
It really is. Stranger Things somehow managed to stay one of the last true event shows where a massive global audience is all watching and theorizing at the same time.
The editors, they understood the assignment. They knew, focus on feeling, on memory, on those iconic shots of the kids on their bikes with that season 1 lighting.
And that strategy alone just cranked the emotional stakes up to 11. Pun intended.
And if there was one definitive core to all that emotional weight, one thematic anchor, it had to be Jim Hopper's voiceover.
Oh, Hopper's voiceover.
It's the emotional manifesto of the entire trailer, that chilling, really resonant line.
Your childhood was taken from you, but you never let it break you.
It just creates this profound sense of irreversible commitment. It frames the entire final conflict not just as a fight against a monster, but as a reclamation of self.
Presented through the lens of profound paternal sacrifice. It feels like the ultimate sign-off from a character who has been through absolute hell and back.
But this high emotional investment, it comes with a huge price, right? The expectations are just astronomical. They're through the roof.
And that intense hope is unfortunately mixed with some lingering and very specific criticisms about weaknesses and, let's call it narrative protectionism in Volume 2.
That's the duality we have to face going into this. Everyone is desperate for a spectacular finish, but there's this strong undercurrent of fan criticism saying that in recent episodes, the core characters felt
A little too protected by the script. That's the phrase we saw over and over.
Exactly.
And this leads directly to the core anxiety about this final episode. Will it deliver real, genuine, bloody consequences?
The fans are absolutely demanding them. They need those consequences to make sure Vecna is cemented as a truly existential threat.
Not just a villain who makes these long, threatening speeches, but somehow always misses the chance to land that final, devastating blow on a major character.
The pressure to stick the landing and deliver something irreversible, a death, a permanent injury, a total loss of power, it's immense.
It is. And this intense emotional demand is what dictates whether the structural length of the finale will feel earned or just protracted.
And that is the perfect bridge. We're moving from the intangible, the feelings and expectations, to the concrete. Let's ground ourselves in what we actually know about the finale's structure and scale, because the runtime itself is a huge, bold statement from the creators.
It is a statement of serious commitment, yeah. The known facts about the final episode are crucial starting points for any theory. Even the title, The Right Side Up.
It's a clear mirror image of the Upside Down.
Exactly. It immediately suggests a theme of restoration or reversal or the final permanent sealing of that rift. It implies the conflict will end with the world returning to some kind of natural state.
But maybe a profoundly changed one.
Oh, absolutely.
And the sheer physical scale of this thing is what's making headlines. The runtime is confirmed to be feature length. It's reported as over 2 hours.
2 hours and 8 minutes, specifically.
This isn't just a long episode. It's one of Netflix's longest single-episode narratives ever. It rivals a feature film.
And we have some crucial insight into how that time is allocated, which is really the key to understanding the creator's intent. Sources close to production are indicating that a significant chunk of that time,
How much are we talking?
approximately 35 to 40 minutes,
Yeah.
will be dedicated solely to the epilogue, or a prolonged happy ending montage.
Wait, 40 minutes? That's nearly a full standard episode just for the aftermath.
I know. So if you take that 40 minutes out of the 2 hours and 8 minutes, we're left with roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes for the actual high-stakes conflict to resolve.
Which is still a lot, but that split it's very analytical.
It is. That 80-minute window for the main conflict is tight for the level of chaos Vecna has unleashed. But that 40-minute commitment to closure tells you everything about the Duffer Brothers' priority.
Which is
Narrative satisfaction for the characters. They are preemptively promising that the found family theme will be honored. The characters who survive will get a proper send-off, which mitigates the potential bitterness of any necessary sacrifice.
it promises a final period of reflection, not just a sudden, shocking cut to black.
Precisely.
Beyond the length, the specific setting of it all creates this beautiful, thematic, full-circle moment for the entire series. The whole finale takes place on a single date, November 6th, 1987.
And that date is so important. Why that date? It's the 4-year anniversary of Will Byers' original disappearance back in 1983.
Everything started with Will vanishing into the Upside Down on that exact day.
Everything will end on that day, 4 years later. It's narrative symmetry at its finest. It suggests the resolution has to inherently loop back and resolve the initial trauma that started this entire saga.
Okay, let's pivot to a character whose arc just hit an unbelievable emotional peak in Volume 2, and whose final status is still driving so much of the fan discussion. Max Mayfield.
Max's story is absolutely critical to the emotional payoff here. We know she was in a medically induced coma, her consciousness just tragically trapped in what our sources describe as Vecna's mind prison.
And one source used a really specific metaphor for that, didn't they?
They did. They called it Camazotz.
From A Wrinkle in Time. Wow, that's a deep cut for the listener.
It's a deep cut, but it's a perfect parallel. Can I just elaborate on that for a second?
Please do.
So, in Mayan mythology, Camazotz is a bat god associated with darkness and death. But in the context of A Wrinkle in Time, the planet Camazotz is all about this absolute terrifying conformity where individuals lose their free will. They're all controlled by a single pulsing brain.
So the analogy is that Vecna didn't just injure Max.
He actively incorporated her consciousness into his controlled mind world. He reduced her to a state of forced compliance and isolation. So the battle for Max was a battle for her soul and her autonomy against psychic totalitarianism.
That explanation just makes the emotional beats of her recovery even more intense. That reunion scene with Lucas in episode 7, I mean, so many critics called it the strongest performance of the season. It was just pure emotional devastation.
It was relief and grief and unconditional love, all poured out with almost no dialogue.
But what's fascinating is the clarification we got in that episode about her earlier near-death experience.
The reveal, it wasn't that the Kate Bush song itself was magic. It was the emotional connection the song represented. Her link to Lucas, to her friends, to everything she loved. Love saved her, not magic or a specific melody.
And that elevates the show's theme so much, doesn't it? It confirms that the power of human connection is the real force against Vecna's nihilism.
Totally. So the strong fan prediction here is that Max fully recovers, maybe dealing with permanent trauma or physical scars, but ultimately completing her arc. She accepts help, she accepts being loved. She finally lets people in after the grief of her brother's death.
It provides a hopeful but still very earned resolution to her journey.
And that hopeful outcome contrasts so sharply with the dark, pivotal role that Will Byers is now expected to play.
Right. Will is no longer the perpetual victim, the missing boy, or the host.
No. He finally tapped into his powers, his profound connection to Vecna, and he actively fought back. He stopped Vecna from strangling Max's consciousness in the mindscape.
He's the strategic bridge.
Precisely. Will is now considered the narrative bridge between the core group and Vecna. The most prominent working theory involves him using his unique 4-year-old psychic connection, the one that started on November 6, 1983, to basically siphon power away from Vecna during Eleven's final psychic attack.
So he becomes a strategic weakness for the villain, neutralizing Vecna's strength from the inside.
It's his ultimate transformation from victim to a central, indispensable hero.
That detailed setup, Max saved by love, Will fighting Vecna internally, it just perfectly sets the stage for the massive final confrontation.
It does.
So let's move into the true nature of the final villain, because right now, fans are battling fiercely over whether Henry Creel is the actual end boss or just the very powerful appetizer for a cosmic, much larger evil.
And this is the central axis of conflict. The source material offers two really competing interpretations. Now, the creators themselves, they stated unequivocally that the narrative roadmap revolves around Henry Creel's story and his direct connection to the Mind Flayer.
They called that revelation the most shocking and decisive turn in the entire series.
They did, which leans very heavily toward the immediate interpretation. Theory A, Vecna as the apex predator.
Right.
Correct. So Theory A posits that Vecna has transcended his human physical form. He's successfully fused with the Mind Flayer, and he's now acting as its conscious, cruel core.
He used its power to merge Dimension X with Hawkins, to tear the town apart with that mega rift.
And that explains his monumental, almost divine appearance in the trailer. He is the unified ultimate master. He's no longer separate from the Flayer. He's lending his twisted intellect and devastating psychic abilities to this raw, interdimensional energy source.
Henry Creel is the true thinking god of the Upside Down.
That's the theory.
But the visual stakes of the finale feel so much bigger than just one twisted human. And that's why Theory B, Vecna, as merely the herald, has such compelling traction.
Theory B suggests that Vecna, for all his monstrous power, is ultimately just the pawn who opened the door for something infinitely worse.
A cosmic primordial evil.
The jump to full-on Lovecraftian horror. This theory often links back to deep cuts from Dungeons & Dragons lore, specifically entities like the Tessel Hydra.
The many-headed Hydra from the game that the kids named their first monster after.
Exactly. Or simply a massive, terrifying, unnameable Mind Flayer face emerging through the ultimate catastrophic rift.
And the narrative argument here is that a singular human consciousness, even one as powerful as Henry Creel's, can't logically encapsulate the sheer cosmic scope of the devastation the show is visually setting up.
Some fans feel the ending would be anticlimactic or narratively incomplete if Henry is the only confrontation.
Especially compared to the apocalyptic scale we're being shown.
And the visual evidence supports that idea of an escalation beyond Henry's personal history. We see Hopper in the trailer looking around with complete, genuine bewilderment as the entire world is visibly tearing itself apart.
Far beyond just the localized destruction of Hawkins.
Yes, that suggests a threat that genuinely threatens existence. A cosmic horror that transcends Eleven's trauma or Henry's mommy issues.
Okay, let's bring in a specific piece of evidence. 11 going back into the tank. What does that sequence tell us about her objective if she's confronting this ultimate evil?
That is a crucial scene. 11 going back into the isolation tank, it strongly suggests she's not just rerunning the Hawkins lab trauma simulation to gather more power against Henry.
She's searching for something deeper.
She's searching for the fundamental truth. She's seeking the true unforgiving master hiding behind Vecna, the absolute cosmic villain who is finally emerging. She needs to understand the origin point, the reason the Upside Down even exists, to confront the fundamental source of the chaos, not just its current resident.
And to complicate this whole psychic chess game even more, there's speculation that Vecna may not even be physically present in every confrontation.
Right, which links back to a classic Season 2 character.
Charlie.
Exactly. Fans are throwing out the possibility that Kali, Eleven's long-lost sister, is involved in this final stand. She has the power to create highly complex, persuasive illusions. The source material calls it a weaponized reality distortion.
So this is the foundation of the theory that Kali might be projecting the image of Vecna behind Hopper in that famous trailer shot.
Or even assisting Eleven in the psychic fight, creating a distraction or an illusion.
Why would they do that? Why bring Kali back for this?
Well, it serves multiple purposes. First, you're using a long-established but often underused character power to create narrative tension. Secondly, if the illusion is real, it could be a powerful distraction to allow the physical crew Hopper, Joyce, to land a physical blow, while Eleven and Will fight the real Vecna consciousness elsewhere.
And there's the military angle, too.
Exactly. It might be an illusion designed to mislead the military who are also hunting them. If the true fight is ultimately psychological, Kali is their greatest strategic asset.
And speaking of psychological warfare, let's bring in that fascinating, subtle source nugget that directly influences our closing thought. The idea that Vecna has been actively manipulating the group's reality, not just traumatizing them.
Ah, yes, the memory manipulation theory.
This suggests he's not just killing people, he's subtly gaslighting the survivors on a mass scale to weaken their unity and resolve.
And the strongest piece of anecdotal evidence for this that circulated in the fan theory threads was that detail that Joyce and Mike forgot Will's birthday in a previous season.
Which, at the time, everyone just took as poor writing or a minor plot hole.
But this theory argues it was a deliberate seed. If Vecna can subtly alter the memories of the people closest to Will, the person he has the strongest connection to, then the final battle may be less about physical victory and more about forcing everyone to remember the fundamental truths that Vecna is systematically trying to erase or distort.
This is a far more insidious kind of horror than just body snatching.
Much more.
And that concept of psychological cost, it takes us right into the core question that is currently consuming the fandom and driving all this emotional noise. Given these enormous stakes, who will pay the ultimate price?
This is the big one. As we established, fans are demanding genuine consequences. The intense hope for a successful conclusion is directly tied to the need to confirm that Vecna is a true existential threat who can actually land a final irreversible blow.
The showrunners have promised a significant, painful death, and the fans are just scrutinizing every single character for fatal flaws and narrative foreshadowing.
So let's start with the one who seems most narratively primed for a total, heroic departure. 11.
Theory 1. 11's ultimate sacrifice, the clean ending.
She's consistently framed as the final button you press when the world completely breaks. So the theory posits she sacrifices herself to permanently seal the Upside Down. She exchanges her life for everyone else's future, thereby fulfilling her destiny as the world's savior.
But what's the mechanism there? How could her death accomplish a permanent seal?
It's imagined as a massive world-altering event. Either a time reversal, where the clock snaps back to the moment before the first gate opened, but with 11 just gone from the timeline. Or the very fabric of reality just folds shut. The moment her power, the source of the original tear, disappears from the human world. The cost is irreversible, and it's clean in its logic. She created the problem, and only she can remove herself to fix it.
And there's that military angle tied to her, which offers an alternative, maybe less lethal form of sacrifice.
Yes, the alternative spin suggests 11 and Kali don't physically die, but fake their deaths using Kali's advanced illusion powers. The goal there is to stop the US government and the unrelenting MK Ultra program from ever pursuing them again.
So they would just flee to live completely isolated lives, known only by Hopper and Mike.
And we should probably pause on MK Ultra for the listener, just to define how it frames her entire existence.
Good idea.
MK Ultra was the real-world, highly controversial CIA program involving human experimentation. They were trying to develop mind control and psychological torture techniques. In the show's universe, this program is responsible for creating 11 and all the other numbered subjects, and for weaponizing their childhood trauma.
So, for 11 and Kali, faking their deaths isn't just a plot device.
It's the ultimate act of reclaiming their autonomy. It's escaping institutionalized abuse. It would give them freedom, but at the cost of that normal life they crave with their friends.
That brings us to the most popular and maybe the most narratively expected candidate for death, the profound paternal sacrifice of Jim Hopper.
Theory 2. The Hopper sacrifice, the paternal ending. Hopper's arc, especially after Russia and his return, is just so beautifully primed for this.
He wants his happiest ending.
And fans speculate that his happiest ending might be knowing he saved 11 and Joyce, completing the parenting arc he so tragically lost with his first daughter, Sarah.
He is the most popular candidate for a clean, heroic death. He's always acting as a shield.
And David Harbour himself has spoken about the complexity of what constitutes a happy ending for a character like Hopper, suggesting it might be redemptive action rather than personal peace.
He's also uniquely vulnerable to Vecna's psychological attacks because of that trauma.
Oh, absolutely. Vecna attacks based on deep-seated trauma and regret. Hopper's grief over losing Sarah and his profound fear of losing 11 again make him a perfect wide-open target for Vecna's mind games.
Fans are desperate for a direct confrontation where Hopper addresses Vecna not as the monster but as Henry Creel,
forcing the villain to face his own distorted humanity right before Hopper makes the ultimate physical sacrifice to save the kids. That's the dream scenario for many.
Now let's discuss the character whose potential death would maximize the emotional damage and generate the most audience blowback. Steve Harrington.
Theory 3, the big one, centers on Steve. The intense focus on Dustin's primal grief and scream in the trailer is the primary source evidence.
It suggests the loss must be acutely personal, that formative.
And Steve, who is transformed into the beloved mom and protector of the younger kids, he is the prime candidate to maximize that specific kind of pain.
And of course, the fandom reaction is fiercely, famously protective.
Ferocious. This is where we get the classic meta-narrative line. If Steve dies, Netflix dies.
And that's not just hyperbole, is it? It represents this shift in power dynamics where fan communities feel they have a direct say in character destinies.
Especially for a character whose redemption arc has been so universally praised. But analysts argue that killing Steve, especially after Dustin just lost Eddie Munson in Volume 2, would indeed maximize that emotional damage.
And it would establish definitively that even with fan favorite status, no one is safe in this finale.
It's the ultimate narrative risk-reward scenario. The writers are in a tough spot. Kill Steve and face the rage, or kill a secondary character and risk the audience feeling the stakes were too low.
Which just validates the protected by the script critique.
Exactly. The intensity of Dustin's scream is their narrative promise that the emotional punch will land, whether or not Steve is the specific target.
That scream also opens the possibility of a fan-pleasing fake-out, though.
It does. One prominent suggestion is that Dustin is screaming not because Steve is dead, but because Steve is severely, agonizingly injured.
Sacrificing himself to save others and being carried away by medics, clinging to life.
This creates the necessary high stakes and emotional devastation without forcing the writers to kill off the series' biggest fan favorite entirely. It's the tightrope walk of high stakes versus closure.
Okay, let's venture into the darkest theory, connecting all the way back to the very first season, Will's dark sacrifice.
Theory 4. The Horcrux scenario. And this theory, referencing the need to destroy pieces of a villain's soul, is just chilling.
Will has been irrevocably connected to Vecna since the beginning, since November 6th, 1983.
And the theory suggests that the only way to truly eradicate Vecna, to destroy his psychological core, is for Will to die too, because their connection has become an inseparable tether, a shared essence.
Can you detail the mechanism of this Horcrux theory for us? How exactly is Will linked?
Well, the theory posits two scenarios. First, that Vecna, during his initial influence on Will, essentially left a piece of his consciousness, or a psychic tether, inside Will's body.
A means of navigation and surveillance in the human world.
Exactly. So to kill Vecna's consciousness in the Mind Flayer means that attached fragment in Will must also be destroyed. The second scenario is even more tragic.
Go on.
It's that Vecna's physical form is so weakened, but his consciousness is so tethered to Will's living existence, that bridge we discussed, that removing the living host is the only way to completely shut down the line of communication between the dimensions.
Effectively killing Vecna by severing his only remaining anchor to reality.
The emotional devastation of this theory would be total, forcing his sacrifice right after finding acceptance.
Devastatingly tragic, Will would be forced to pay the ultimate price right after his coming out scene and beginning to use his powers for good.
It would complete a tragic 4-year full circle arc, starting with his vanishing and ending with his deliberate redemptive sacrifice. However, critics of this theory argue it might just be too dark for a show that, at its core, is fundamentally about hope and found family.
Which naturally leads us to the most hopeful middle ground, and perhaps the smartest way to stick the landing without unnecessary gore.
Theory 5. Distributed cost. The hopeful middle ground. This suggests a victory achieved with severe cost, but no one actually dies. Everyone pays a price.
Which fits the show's underlying theme of growing up and losing innocence, where the loss is intangible but permanent.
Exactly. Give us some examples of this distributed cost.
Okay, for example, 11 loses her powers permanently but gets to live a normal life. This is the ultimate cost for her, trading power for peace.
What about Will?
Will severs his connection to Vecna but loses his memories of the past 4 years, a forced mental reset. Max deals with permanent physical scars or disability, making her healing a continuous, visible struggle.
And Hopper.
Hopper perhaps stays behind to fully seal the gate, but finds a definitive, guaranteed way back eventually. It delays closure, but doesn't deny it.
So it's the loss of easy answers and the loss of innocence, but the found family stays intact, which would satisfy the emotional demands of that 40-minute epilogue.
It would definitely subvert the expectation that someone must die. It would be the ultimate twist. Genuine, hard-won hope.
Absolutely. The personal prediction from one of the source analysts we examined suggested a blend of these theories.
Oh, interesting. What was it?
Hopper makes the sacrifice, fully committing to his paternal role, but Will saves him at the last second, using his Vecna connection to sever the link completely, exhausting himself in the process.
So, Hopper survives.
Hopper survives, 11 keeps her powers, though they are maybe diminished or changed, Max fully recovers, and everyone survives. But their childhood is definitively over. That scenario honors both the need for high stakes and the theme of found family winning.
Now that we've established the emotional stakes and the potential costs, we really have to confront the elephant in the room. The criticisms leveled at Volume 2 and the immense pressure they place on the finale to be narratively coherent and logical.
Let's get into it. The fan criticisms and the inconsistencies.
This is where fan scrutiny turns truly critical, driven by that earlier sense that characters were protected by the script.
And a major ongoing point of contention is the perceived nerfing of Eleven, a decrease in her power and her narrative focus.
She's seen by some as systematically weaker, having lost the magic and the sheer protagonism she had in earlier seasons, sometimes described, maybe a little harshly, as a created mute who mostly reacts rather than drives the plot.
And conversely, that vacuum was immediately filled by Will, who gained all this unexpected power and focus.
He became the new focus, the Harry Potter analog in the narrative, taking the emotional spotlight away from the original protagonist.
Which for some long-term fans felt like a narrative betrayal. I mean, one fan jokingly noted that Holly, Hopper's daughter, seemed to have more incidental screen time than Eleven.
Which just highlights the frustration with her sideline status. Okay, let's hit the plot holes that broke immersion for a lot of viewers and make the stakes feel less permanent. The first one deals with environmental hazards and established rules.
The air toxicity retcon. In earlier seasons, especially when they had to enter the Upside Down for a long time, the air was consistently considered toxic. It required special suits, respiratory protection. It was a biological hazard.
And now?
Now characters just enter and breathe normally, walking around exposed. The explanations have varied from the charitable, like they only used suits for precaution because it was uncharted territory,
to the much more cynical fan take. The writers simply forgot the established canon.
Right. And the implication of that retcon is a subtle shift from biological horror to psychological horror.
What do you mean?
If the Upside Down is biologically hazardous, the threat is physical and constant. If they can breathe freely, the threat is entirely psychic and tied to Vecna's mind games. Fans felt this change was necessary to facilitate more open action sequences in Season 4, but it weakened the established danger of the dimension itself.
The next major inconsistency involves the military and Nancy Wheeler, the perceived Rambo or hyper-competent civilian.
This is a huge point of friction, and one that specifically drew international critique for just stretching plausibility. Highly trained, professional soldiers are consistently and unrealistically defeated easily by civilian characters, especially teenagers, in combat.
And Nancy Wheeler, in particular, was highlighted for exhibiting what critics called girl boss plot armor.
She's seen shooting multiple trained armed soldiers and escaping without a scratch, maneuvering with professional military competence that just does not track with her established background.
And this is where that great Portuguese critique nugget comes in.
Yes, critics absolutely call this absurd and a total chuta do balde da verosimilhança, which literally means tossing verisimilitude out the window.
The core issue wasn't the heroic moment itself, but the repeated, convenient inability of professional antagonists to function, ensuring Nancy and the others could escape without any real lasting injury. It broke the immersion.
And the monsters themselves felt fundamentally inconsistent in terms of their strength and vulnerability, which is a big betrayal of the established Season 1 canon.
The monster weakness-strength issues. These were glaring because they violated established rules.
Demogorgons, who tanked heavy machine guns and military-grade explosions from the army in earlier seasons, are now inexplicably injured or knocked back by far less effective means.
Like being injured by a liquor bottle thrown by Karen Wheeler.
Or knocked back by a simple kick from Lucas. And why does the Lucas kick bother people more?
Well, because of the implied force, right. Karen's attack was a surprise, a desperation move. Lucas is an athlete, but the Demogorgon had demonstrated it was impervious to professional weaponry. A simple kick, even a strong one, should not register against a creature that shrugged off sustained automatic fire.
That stretch of logic just broke immersion for many, especially when you contrast it with their prior resilience.
And then there were the Demodogs with their confusingly selective shearing.
Yes. They ignored Max's continuous loud music, the entire mechanism of her being saved, but were attracted to the sudden loud noise of a washing machine in the hospital scene. Fans found this to be pure convenience, engineered solely to move the plot toward that hospital chase sequence.
Tying back to character continuity, there's a massive yet subtle continuity error involving two fan favorites who had been apart for years.
The Max Hopper continuity error. This was widely noted. Max had been in a coma since Hopper was presumed dead and then returned. Yet she showed zero surprise, zero shock, zero reaction to seeing him alive after waking up.
an event that should have been traumatic and confusing, if not joyful.
It suggests the production rushed the sequence, or perhaps just forgot to account for the emotional significance of Hopper's survival in Max's immediate recovery arc.
Finally, there's the criticism that the urgency of the apocalypse got lost in character drama, which really touches on the core identity of the show.
This refers to the pacing issue. Many viewers complained that too much time was spent on human drama. They specifically cited Will's coming out scene as badly timed and out of place in the middle of a massive, urgent confrontation where the world was literally tearing apart.
So the general sense was that the world was ending, but the characters were prioritizing emotional processing.
Which led to the sense that the series was dumbing itself down or focusing on an agenda rather than the main conflict. The narrative tension was just undercut by personal focus.
It creates a feeling that the characters aren't truly acknowledging the stakes. They have unlimited time for emotional reflection even when the ground is splitting open, which is another form of plot protection.
And that apocalyptic scenario from the end of season 4, with the 4 giant rifts tearing the town apart, seemed to be resolved or thrown away quickly when season 5 opens. The city returned to apparent normalcy so fast, suggesting the rifts were a momentary visual spectacle rather than a permanent ongoing threat.
Driven by pure convenience and the need to reset the setting for the final act.
That is a staggering amount of baggage and conflicting expectation for the final 2 hours and 8 minutes to carry. The pressure to reconcile all these plot inconsistencies with a satisfying high-consequence ending is just immense.
It is, but let's synthesize this for you. We've explored the sky-high emotional stakes of this finale, driven by a decade of investment and that powerful parental voiceover from Hopper.
We've defined the core conflict as the battle between Vecna as the unified thinking master or merely the herald of a cosmic Lovecraftian evil.
And we've dissected the high cost demanded by the fan base, with sacrifices ranging from Eleven's life to permanent emotional damage and the end of childhood innocence.
Crucially, we've also acknowledged the heavy criticism regarding plot holes and the perceived lack of consequences in Volume 2, which just raises the bar for the finale's coherence.
But despite those concerns and all the critical baggage, the sheer length of the finale, 2 hours and 8 minutes, with a promised 40-minute epilogue, it guarantees one thing: a massive, comprehensive emotional payoff and definitive closure.
The creators know they have to stick the landing, whether that landing is brutal or profoundly bittersweet.
And that leads us back to the final thought we want to leave you with, a thought that pulls together the psychological nature of this final conflict.
We know the Duffer Brothers laid out an explicit narrative roadmap revolving around Henry Creel and the Mind Flayer. But remember that compelling fan theory we discussed earlier, the subtle evidence that Vecna is already altering the group's reality and memories.
The example of Joyce and Mike forgetting Will's birthday. If he can manipulate external reality through subtle memory wipes, the entire fight is about perceived truth versus actual truth.
So what if the final battle is less about physical sacrifice and more about a psychological trait, a profound forcing of memory? What if Eleven and Will, using their combined psychic connection, target the deepest trauma not just in themselves, but in their enemy?
What if they force Vecna to vividly and fully remember his own suppressed humanity, that innocent, forgotten Henry Creel who once existed, to fundamentally weaken him?
A redemption arc for the villain, triggered by the very children he tried to break.
Exactly. Leading to Henry Creel's ultimate self-inflicted sacrifice. He doesn't die a monster, but chooses to erase himself as Henry Creel to permanently seal the Upside Down, exchanging his twisted life for the world's safety.
The question then becomes this: would Henry Creel's redemption, his self-sacrifice, be a satisfying enough emotional and narrative ending to resolve a decade of dread? Or is the only way to truly stick the landing something brutal and irreversible, demanding the life of a beloved hero like Hopper or Steve? That's the profound conflict waiting for us in the right side up.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.